guys, CoinFlip here doing a quick video on opening and isolating ranges. So first we need to set up our hem, simply have the position report tab open, and in there just have UO, PFR and raise versus limpers. I'll refer to these as opening range and ISO range respectively. And I'm going to be analysing the database of El Rosmiro and potential improvements he could make. With all these ranges, it's just a rough idea of what optimal is considered to be. A percent or two either side isn't going to make a lot of difference. So, in the small blind, as you can see, right here, it used to be plus EV to open super wide because people simply weren't defending and 3-betting the big blind enough. Now people are playing much better, and we want to keep this number a few percentage below your button opening range. So, around 42% or so is good. If we see a nittier or fishier player in the big blind, especially those who don't tend to 3-bet, we can extend our opening range by up to 10% or so. Likewise, we want to reduce our opening range to accommodate more aggressive players. In terms of ISO range, the number here will tend to be significantly less than your opening range, as we are out of position on the limper. I think around half of your opening range is good. In the big blind, we want to ISO more here, around 5% more than your small blind, as we don't have an out of position big blind range to contend with. Hero here, as you can see, has decent spacing between those stats, but the ISO numbers in the blinds just simply need to be higher. And you can see by his opening range in the small blind as well, he's just a few percent off, but not too bad. So in MP, we want to be opening 22% and in EP 18%. I often find that players have the same opening ranges in EP and as they do in MP, so definitely something to watch out for. We can see here Hero is playing too tight in these positions and needs to loosen up somewhat. As we can't ISO in EP, but in MP we should be ISOing roughly the same percentage as our open, as we pretty much never limp behind here. So we can see Hero needs to ISO a lot more here. It's just 12.7%, so it needs to be up to around 20% would be better. So in the cutoff, we want to be opening around 30% of hands. In my opinion, most regs at small stakes don't open the cutoff enough, and you'll see many regs around the 25% mark, like our Hero here. If there are a couple nits or recreational players behind, we can happily increase our opening range to around 35% or so. Likewise, if we have two or so aggressive 3-bet happy guys behind, then we probably want to cut out the bottom 5% of our range to adjust to this, looking especially at the button, who's going to be causing the most trouble. We should be isolating around 5% or so less than our opening range. So we can see here, Hero is actually relatively pretty balanced, but like with all these ISO range, it's good to bear in mind, if the player who's limped is particularly weak, we can look to extend our ISO range by a fair few percent more to capture the EV of that player. So onto the button. Here we open the widest. It used to be fashionable, especially at small stakes, to open really, really wide. Like even up to 60% could be plus EV. People are defending a lot better these days, so it's best to keep that number below 50%, and I would say probably around 45% is optimal these days. Again, we want to be widening or tightening our range depending on who is in the blinds, looking out in particular for the big blind, who's going to be defending versus our open the most. In terms of isolating, we want to ISO around 10% less than your opening range, and in some instances, even greater than 50% is fine if the limper is a particularly bad fish and the blinds don't tend to cause problems. As you can see, Hero is actually pretty close to optimal with his opening range, but needs to be ISOing at least 10% more. It would make sense for Hero to pay close attention to the blinds and open up that button range whenever he can and ISO more liberally versus weak opponents. So overall, I would say Hero's opening and ISO range nicely staggered, so he certainly has good positional awareness. But in my opinion, he simply needs to loosen up a little bit everywhere, especially in those earlier positions. So yeah, I mean, I find in general people just don't ISO enough. We have to remember that most of the time we want to be isolating wide because the weakest players limp, and so the EV is greater. Thanks for watching.